Welcome to Box Out Banter. Chris Okamura, Jordan Christmas. Let's get right into it, Jordan. This has been an insane week. Probably the most crazy week in recent NBA in terms of just how much happened.
Yeah, hopefully we can actually record an episode of Box Out Banter and not have crazy shit happen like literally 20 minutes after we're done recording.
Yeah, before we get into anything that happened this week, right after we finish recording, Drew Holiday gets traded, then Bogdan goes to the Bucks in a sign and trade,
then
but
it
doesn't.
but doesn't happen, and then now he might go to the Hawks. It's all weird and strange, but let's start with, because really I think the draft and free agency kind of go hand in hand. We could talk about it separately later, but they do go hand in hand in terms of what moves teams are looking to make and
Right.
things of that nature. So what was the thing that stuck out to you on draft night? Because that's when all the action started, really. Picks were flying, contracts were getting offloaded. Your team and my team might have two of the best executives in basketball right now.
Yeah.
And it's just watching all these moves fly and then seeing the cramped market. And now that the dust is settled, I'm just wondering, what were your first initial thoughts of free agency before we get into more team specific things?
Free agency or the draft?
Let's start off with
Let's start the draft because that was
start
first.
with the draft. Yeah.
So I really amazingly, I love what the Hornets and the Kings did.
Same. I wanted to talk about the Hornets and the Kings, actually. Shout out to the Kings. I live in Sacramento. Watched a lot of terrible Kings basketball over the years, but mainly staying up here in Northern California. And I'm finally glad. Like, the Kings, based on Kings Twitter and Kings media that I follow, Kings media that I have met going to a few games this year before humans were not allowed in stadiums anymore. It was this sense of dread. Buddy Hield has been discontent. Vlade Divac has been terrible, and they've wanted him gone forever. And draft night was kind of the first night where Kings fans enjoyed themselves.
Right.
Tyrese Halliburton fell, I think, way too far.
I could have swore he was going to go top 10. And
I could have sworn he was going to go to
Phoenix.
I thought he was going to go to Phoenix. I was like, this is a perfect guy to put next to Devin Booker. I mean, anytime you get a guard with size that can pass and shoot, even though his shot is wonky as hell, that's the perfect skill set to put next to Booker. But then Halliburton falls to the Kings, and he wants to go to the Kings. He wants to play with De'Aaron Fox. And with the new front office in place with Monty McNair, it just seemed like Kings fans just have a breath of fresh air. And he was talking about how damn fit he wants to get the best prospects available. I'm sure Kings fans would have loved to have a GM with that philosophy 2 years ago specifically, when we all know what happened on that draft night. But the change in philosophy, getting young players, trying to offload not older players, but players in their late 20s, don't necessarily fit the timeline of their star De'Aaron Fox. It seems like they're committed now to tearing this thing down, but in the process of tearing it down, building around their best player. And Halliburton was a good start. I like that they also got Ramsey in the second round, and there was another wing they got in the second round. I'm gonna
Robert Woodward.
Yeah,
he's really talented.
Robert Woodward. It just seems like there's a philosophy behind this draft for the first time in forever. Not Marvin Bagley can play the small forward position type of philosophy. And Kings fans just got to feel really good about it. I like their draft, and I like the Halliburton pick a lot.
Yeah, I do really enjoy the Halliburton pick. The thing that I will say is it's a little different. So for me, it's a thing where with something like the Pelicans, I love what the Pelicans did too, right? Drafting Kira Lewis Jr., I think putting him, Lonzo, and Zion together, building and just trying to run, right, and be as fast as possible. And I think that's the idea where it is very much building around your star by accentuating and getting better at what they do best, right?
Yep.
And building around what they do best. Whereas the Kings' philosophy looks like it is building around what De'Aaron Fox needs around him and to balance things out rather than going all in on like the speed factor, which I think is
yeah,
interesting because
yeah.
I see this as like the John Wall Bradley Beal pairing because Wall is De'Aaron Fox is a lot like how John Wall like a young not injured John Wall was, if you can remember back that far.
When he
Like
was
they
a
just
really good player.
they just run and they're the fastest player on the court. They get it and go, and they're great at dishing on the run, and they're the most dangerous players on the break. But then you pair them with a guard that can slow things down, can play in the half court, has a little more scoring and overall offensive skill, uh, rather than the pure athleticism.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like that idea, but I don't. I'm curious how, like, when Beal was drafted, Wall was already kind of
He was
hitting his
established. Yeah.
right. He was already hitting kind of his peak, the peak of his powers.
It was like his third year.
Yeah.
John Wall. Yeah.
So I think De'Aaron Fox is a lot less of that now, and he's still developing. And so I'm curious. Like John Wall was set in his ways of wanting to run and wanting to push the pace. Like you weren't going to break him of that at that point. He had seen too much success doing it anyway. But I think with De'Aaron Fox, you have an opportunity now to see these two players grow together and develop together, where there's no true. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox is going to be the alpha dog and the leader, but I think that there's an opportunity for them to grow together and to sort of have a symbiotic relationship rather than what seems like in Washington like a butting of heads of sorts of philosophies.
I could see some similarities. I actually, as you were saying it, I was thinking, well, maybe this is the chance for them to actually find their identity because De'Aaron Fox, his first 2 years, rookie year, he was coming off the bench. He wasn't getting play, or George Hill was the starting point guard there for a bit, and De'Aaron Fox kind of had to get the spot via when George Hill got traded and the vets had to start going. And then in the second year, Dave Yeager was basically like, we're going to go all in on speed. And they were one of the fastest paced teams in the NBA. They won 39 games in the 2018-19 season.
Very fun to watch.
Very fun to watch. It was Sacramento was buzzing. Like I could tell you just from being here, like the pace was fun. It was fun basketball. De'Aaron Fox in the open court was electrifying. He improved as a passer and as a three-point shooter. So it just made him that much more dynamic. And then this year, Luke Walton, while I can appreciate his mindset as a defensive-minded coach, I'm sure you can attest to this more because you've watched him more on a daily basis and followed the news minutia and quotes and what Walton said daily. I have to say, after this year, I'm out on Luke Walton as a coach. Like, and you know,
Yeah.
I've interacted in press conference settings with him and stuff, and he seems like a good guy, means well, and wants to, you know, bring, you know, joy back to Sacramento. But his offenses are always terrible. There was a weird kind of friction in the locker room this past season, especially with, you know, Buddy Hield coming off the bench and not liking his role, starting Bogdan. Earlier in the year, they were losing close games and winning some. They were winning close games and then losing some close games, and they kind of found their stride in late January, early February. But it was just inconsistent play, and a lot of it, I think, had to do with the fact that the Kings were one of the lower-paced teams in the NBA while having arguably the fastest point guard in the NBA. And Luke Walton intentionally tried to slow things down, so for the sake of playing more defense. And if I'm a fan wanting to bring out the best in my young stars, which I think is the best for developing a young player, fuck that. Speed the pace up. And I think Halliburton, he provides a little bit of mix of both. I think he can run the floor and play in a high-paced offense, but he's also somebody, like we talked about in episode 1 when we were talking about our favorite prospects. Halliburton is somebody in the half court who could grease the wheels a little bit offensively. He could be a
he's the glue. He's a glue guy.
He's definitely a glue guy. And De'Aaron Fox is a really good off-ball cutter. His 3-point percentage took a dip this year, but he was taking tougher shots, and also they were not up and down in transition a lot. They were more so in the half court. So I think Halliburton helps them in that way, getting wings around him. I think this is good for Marvin Bagley too, because most of the centers are out, like Alex Len. Unfortunately, Harry Giles is gone, which I thought was a dumb move at the time when the Kings didn't pick up their qualifying offer. But now there's a lot less of a logjam at the big position. So now Marvin Bagley can play next to Fox more easier in a high pace system. Rashawn Holmes, who has a special place in my heart, has turned into a really good center for them this past year. There's a lot to look up at Sacramento. The problem is, and Sam Amick of The Athletic reported this, is that he's already kind of had to fight back some urges from the owner's son, who has been more involved, who had gotten himself more involved in basketball operations, and you know how that can get messy. And part of the reason Monty McNair took the job was he was going to get full autonomy doing his job, let him do his thing. And there's kind of already leaks about how he's already kind of had to push that back. So I'm worried about that, but Kings fans should be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the best draft that we've seen in a long time. To speak on the Luke Walton thing, I think the issue that I have with Walton, obviously we know him as a player. He's an incredibly intelligent player. He obviously knows the game. I think the issue with Walton is he doesn't always command the respect that you would think he should for a coach. I don't think from what I've seen, players don't really respond to him in that kind of way. And I think that he has a lot of difficulty explaining concepts where, like, okay, so I was a Luke Walton guy when he was here, and then he kind of, I was okay with him leaving. And the thing that I always loved about him was the focus on defense and the focus on, like, yeah, we're going to do this. And like, he always seemed to have a plan, but they're always kind of vague. They're always like, yeah, we're going to run the floor. We're going to, get out there, defensive rebound, box out, ball, all that kind of coach speak.
Yeah, the coach jargon.
Right. And then Frank Vogel comes in, and I don't know if it's a difference between Vogel being good. If it says Vogel is good and Luke Walton is bad, I don't know if that's the comparison I'm making here. But like, when you ask Vogel, hey, what is the game plan for tonight? Vogel has actual concepts of like, oh, we're going to switch the man on this port, and this is of something that we made a mistake on. Like, it's detailed. Mm-hmm. It's not just like these vague oversights of like, yeah, we need to like lock in. We need to, all this kind of general hullabaloo. I think it's more detailed, and I never got that detail-oriented focus from a Luke Walton. And I think when you're a coach at this level, the attention to detail is probably the most important thing.
Yeah, and I think Luke Walton also kind of got one. I think he's running on two things. Is when he coached 35 games of that 73-9 Warriors team when Steve Kerr was out with the back injury. Yeah, with the back injury. And then also, it was the first year with the Lakers. I believe it was 2017-18 was when he got hired. Luke Walton, he had the Lakers defensive rating, I think 15th at that point, and the fact that the Lakers had a bunch of kids on that team and how hard it is to get young players
to play
defense, I think people were impressed by that as well. So it was kind of like he was running on that. And now I'm looking at it and I'm like, there's no way in hell Sacramento should be 19th in pace, or should have finished 19th in pace this past year.
Yeah.
Not with De'Aaron Fox. And especially last year when the Kings were top 3, they were 3rd in pace. I hope they could get back to that a little
almost
bit.
The same lineup.
With the same players minus, Rashawn Holmes and a few other bad contracts they signed trying to capitalize on that on the almost playoff run the year before. This is a good opportunity for the Kings. Another good opportunity for a team that might have overpaid for a free agent. I like the Hornets draft also, just because of LaMelo Ball.
Right.
We talked about him. I think he has very high upside.
I love Vernon Carey too. I think
Vernon Carey from
like
Duke. I haven't really watched too much of him, but I know he was a highly recruited high school prospect, right? I've heard his name before, but just having LaMelo Ball alone, 1, brings excitement to Charlotte. 2, sounded like Michael Jordan really wanted this kid. I think he looks at You know how Melo always gets the bad rap for being cocky and appearing cocky and being a terrible interview? I think he's just a stoic kid. I could also tell you, as someone who is stoic most of the time myself, you can't really glean off somebody if they're not too peppy or too upbeat about doing interviews, especially a 19-year-old kid. But there's something in there that MJ obviously likes. He's going to have the keys from day one. It just depends on who's going to go to the bench, Terry Rozier or Devontae Graham. But you screw Terry Rozier and Devontae Graham, no offense. Melo is the franchise, Melo Ball. Give him the keys. Let him make his mistakes. And he has players around him now that actually would help
can teach him and help.
Can help develop him, not just off the court, but on the court. Gordon Hayward, yes, it's an overpay. I still think there's a good player in there still. And that version of Gordon Hayward will absolutely help LaMelo Ball. I think having guys like Devontae Graham, Miles Bridges as kind of like your athletic 3-4 hybrid kind of started coming around. It made a jump a little bit as a 3-point shooter, but still athletic and just a really good talent. Then you have PJ Washington, who could honestly play some stretch 5 with how he shoots the ball and how big he is. The Hornets have some pieces around there and lineups they could put together that I'm really intrigued by, and then I'm going to watch on League Pass this year.
Yeah, they're going to be one of my League Pass teams. I think I think the thing that I love,
they're
like
going to have concern. They're an 8th seed team.
I mean, the thing that I love about giving LaMelo the keys is like he's going to decide his fate.
Yeah.
And so the thing is with that is like the ball kids, regardless of what you want to say about the ball kids, if you think Lonzo's a bust or whatever, I know you and I both love Lonzo, but it's the thing of they love basketball and they're passionate about basketball and they all work extremely hard.
Yeah, that's what we talked about in the first episode. Like, ignore the histrionics of LeVar. Like,
yeah,
if you watch their content and like if you're able to pick out what you're looking for, these kids are dedicated to the game, like you were saying.
And so, like, I have no doubt that he's going to go in there and try to learn as fast as possible and as much as possible and pick up on things. And, like, they're just smart kids. The thing that I will say is, like, I brought this up to someone earlier, and it is, it can go, like, one of two ways. And so, to me, it goes back to the thing of, like, you could easily be Stephon Marbury, where the early success and the early kind of like keys to the car can make you a little overconfident.
Mm-hmm.
If like, right, like that could be a problem later down the line if that's a thing. Or he could end up something like I could see. So, are you watching the Gilbert Arenas podcast at all?
Have you watched? I haven't caught an episode yet. I need to.
So he has this great talk about Jeremy Lin, and it's something that I've felt about Jeremy Lin for a very long time. That Jeremy Lin is better than he shows on the basketball court. And it comes down purely to his attitude and his mentality as a player, where he never fully exerts himself and becomes the player that he's supposed to be. And so the example he brings is like he is a big shot taker. He is someone that is confident with the ball in his hands, wants to lead, wants to take the big shot, isn't afraid to take the big shot, like all that kind of stuff. And he's a very confident player, but he never got that opportunity early in his career. He finally gets it with the Knicks. He's rolling. He's doing great. And then Carmelo comes back and they kind of bump heads because Carmelo is obviously the alpha dog, right?
Yep.
So they bump heads, and then it kind of kills all of that momentum and confidence that Jeremy had.
Keep building.
Right. And then as soon as that happens, then he's just a role player and he's just a guy that's not comfortable and doesn't get to play basketball the way he wants to play basketball. Because then he goes from there to Houston where he has James Harden. Then he goes from there to the Lakers where he has Kobe. And so
and then he went from there to the Hornets where he had Kemba Walker.
Right. So he just never has like that freedom to do anything.
Yeah.
So I could see
Although
that.
Lin was kind of decent for the Hornets, let me just say.
No, I think a lot of people shit on Jeremy Lin for no reason. I think he's a solid basketball player, and I think he's great.
Yep.
A great guy to have in your locker room.
I had to come around on Jeremy Lin because I remember when Linsanity was first happening, and our mutual friend, you'll know who I'm talking about, he's listening to this podcast, was talking about how Jeremy Lin is going to be a superstar and how he's better than, he would rather have him take the last shot than Melo. And I was like, whoa. Okay, hold up now. It was his first year watching basketball, so I gave him a pat, but I was like, hold up. And so I always thought he was kind of overrated because people would treat him like a star. But in retrospect, I was a dumb 19-year-old. I didn't appreciate Linsanity or a dumb 21-year-old. I didn't appreciate Linsanity as much as I should have because, one, it was an incredible run, and two, he turned himself into a really good player. And
the thing is, like, he could always do it. Like, I went to the Summer League game. It's the famous Summer League game where he toasted John Wall. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that.
So Summer League, it was John Wall's first Summer League game, and I went with my dad because we were in Vegas at the time, and I was like, I want to see John Wall, like, because I was a big John Wall guy, so I was like, I want to see John Wall in person. So we're like, all right, cool, we'll go to the Summer League. So we go to the Summer League, and they have Jeremy Lin there, and obviously I know, being an Asian kid that plays basketball, I've known Jeremy Lin since he was at Harvard. I know who he is.
You've had your eye on him.
So I was like, oh, Jeremy Lin's here too. Cool. We're going to see Jeremy Lin and John Wall. And Jeremy Lin torched John Wall. Like, torched him. And you could tell that he was taking it way more seriously than John Wall was, but he had a dunk on him. He went off on John Wall, and it was awesome. And I walked out of UNLV, the gym, and I walked out of there.
This was when Jeremy Lin was this before he joined the, or was he was on the Warriors, right?
Yeah, this is before he got the contract. He was in Summer League for the Mavericks.
Oh, okay.
And so I walked out of that. I think it was one of my first tweets too, because I tweeted, and I just made a Twitter account around then, and I tweeted, like, why hasn't a team signed Jeremy Lin yet? Like, and it was a genuine thing, because it was a thing of, like, I don't understand. And obviously a lot of it, people admit it later, like, a lot of it comes down to, like, the Asian stereotype.
Yeah, it was a racial thing.
Yeah. So, like, I understand it from that perspective, and I understand, like, why as an NBA rep, you're, like, wary, right? I get the bias, and I get it. But, like, he was talented, and, like, I don't feel like he's ever been able to fully show that. The only time he was with that depleted Knicks team, and he did great. But yeah, like, getting back to the point I was saying, I think that now giving LaMelo the keys to the car, ooh, there goes Greg. Giving him the keys to the car is sort of a interesting topic and an interesting point.
Yep.
Just because, like, he can develop in any way he wants to. My only concern is, like, now when you get a Gordon Hayward that you're paying $30 million on, like, obviously Gordon isn't that kind of player. He isn't, like, a braggadocious kind of player, but, like, is there a chip on his shoulder to want to prove himself and prove he's worth that contract? Does he want to come out and show, like, I'm still an all-star, I can still play, I can still do all this stuff, and doesn't what LaMelo can do? So, like, that's the only concern that I have bringing that up.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely an element of Hayward has the big contract now. I was shocked, actually, that he got that contract. Well, not shocked at the team who gave him that contract. I was just like, wow, there was a team that actually wanted to pay Gordon Hayward that amount of money. Well,
remember, he did Charlotte was the one team that wanted to give him that huge contract.
Yeah.
When he left the Jazz the first time.
Yep. You're absolutely right about that. But I think even with Hayward there, kind of like as a secondary ball handler, I really don't think Devontae Graham is a shot creator from a playmaking standpoint. I think he's a
slasher to me.
He's a slasher and a shot maker. He's a really good 3-point shooter, especially from deep. So that'll help. I think as long as the Hornets, to me, the Hornets have their two playmakers, right? They have Ball and they have Hayward. You could who knows what's going to happen with Rozier. I still am kind of irrationally holding on to Malik Monk stock as well. I think I just we need to get him out of there. But maybe with a playmaker like Ball, you can bring some of that value out of Monk as well. I just think teams should always have multiple playmakers and ball handlers, and I think the Hornets are at a good start at least, even if they overpaid Hayward. And yes, they're probably going to be fighting with the Hawks and the Wizards and a few of the other bottom feeders in the Eastern Conference for the 8th seed, because that's like the 1 seed where, because the East used to be, 2 teams could sneak into the 7th and 8th seed with really bad records. That's not the case anymore. Like, really, it's the 8th seed that's up for grabs if you look at the standings and who the East powerhouses are. And if you think about the Magic, the Wizards, the Hornets, like, those are already 3 teams right there that are and the Hawks. The Cavaliers have also talked about fighting for that 8th seed. There's only like 5 teams in one spot. The Hornets, I think, put themselves in a good position to finally achieve their long vaunted dream of signing contracts to keep that 8th seed.
So here's my thing. Yes, you want to win. Yes, they spend a lot of money. There is a temptation, though, that you have this season be just a LaMelo experiment year, and you go after Cade Cunningham. Because Cade Cunningham with LaMelo is really dangerous.
Well, see, that's what we would do, but we're not Michael Jordan, a homicidal competitive maniac who probably is like, fuck tanking now. Like, we lost a bunch last year.
But, like, could you imagine Cade Cunningham with LaMelo Ball?
So why don't you rap about Cade Cunningham a little bit for people who don't know who he is, and people who, like myself, just over the last few weeks are starting to get into the weeds of high school prospects, especially after seeing Holmgren and Amani Bates go one-on-one. Why don't you talk about Cade a little bit?
So Cade Cunningham's he's a 2-guard, can play a little lead guard, can handle the ball, but he's mainly a 2-guard. He's 6'6", with 220, I think. He's going to go to OSU this upcoming year. But he's fast. He's good athleticism. He has a really good feel for the game, really great passer, playmaker. I see a lot of like more athletic Tyrese Halliburton, bigger, stronger Tyrese Halliburton. Has the defensive capabilities, can switch 1 through 3. Good feet. He's still working on the shooting, but I mean, what kid at that age isn't working on the shooting?
Right.
But yeah, like, he just has all of the tools that you would want in terms of like a slasher, playmaker, kind of big 2-guard.
And that's exactly why me and you would be tanking for
Cade Cunningham.
Because the name of the game right now is big and skill, size and skill, and they have a big playmaker in LaMelo Ball, and then they have Cade Cunningham, who's 6'6", and could also do a little bit of everything. And what a bunch of prospects need to work on their shooting, right? But
yeah,
you have the outline there of a formula that has been proven and works in the NBA. So I get what the Hornets are doing. I wouldn't do it. I don't like it personally. I think Hayward is a good player, but I probably would have just rolled with the young kids. But, getting Gordon Hayward is not a bad thing. The contract is a problem, but the player itself, I think is fine.
No, I think he's great. I think he's great as a leader and as a locker room guy. And when he's healthy, I think he's a solid contributor. It's just a thing of, can he stay healthy with everything that's gone on in his lower body in the last 3 years?
Yeah, definitely the most snake-bitten free agent that we could remember. Speaking of, free agency, competence, and just know-how, our teams.
Yeah,
we can't go this long in the podcast without talking about our teams. And since unfortunately you guys are the defending champs, I want to go there first because what the fuck? The Lakers got better.
The Lakers got way better.
Like
it's not even a thing of like, oh, they improved in certain areas.
they got
They
way better.
way better.
Like first they get Dennis Schroeder, who we talked about last week a little bit, but Dennis Schroeder I think is a huge upgrade over Rondo. I think Schroeder also provides versatility to play in a bunch of bench lineups and supercharge bench units like he was doing in OKC. Now, especially, you guys got Montrezl Harrell, who you signed from across the hall, which is hilarious, and also hilarious that Harrell thought that he was going to that this team was going to have good chemistry, unlike where he previously was. Kind of took a shot at the Clippers there. Although there have been a lot of reports about chemistry issues with the Clippers. But then you guys get Marc Gasol and Wes Matthews. Bring back KCP. You guys have had I have to say
Markieff Morris.
You guys brought back Markieff Morris too on the minimum, while the Clippers signed his brother Marcus to a $64 million fucking contract.
I was laughing because they share a bank account. They have like a family bank account.
Yeah, yep. They started that in Phoenix.
So
yeah, Marcus is probably like, hey, let me get another bank let me go to another bank real quick and start a second account. But I have to say, man, Pelinka pulled it off. The Lakers are way better than they were.
It's insane. And the thing is, like, I've always talked about how Pau Gasol was the perfect center, the perfect big for Kobe. Right, the intelligence, the defensive capabilities, the playmaking. Obviously, Powell wasn't the shooter that Mark is, but like, just the ability down low, everything that Kobe needed in a center or in a big, Powell had. Right, Mark is kind of the same thing for LeBron, in the way that Mark is a fantastic 3-point shooter. He spreads the floor, but you don't lose any rim protection at all.
Even at his age.
Yeah, which is insane when you think about, like, LeBron hasn't played with a player like Mark that is like the perfect match. AD, of course, is a unicorn that can do everything, but when you talk about like Kevin Love or Bosch, they weren't the rim protectors that Mark is.
And he's always they're
not the shooters that Mark is either.
Yeah. And it works because, like you said, he's, especially over the last few years when he's been encouraged to shoot, he's been a 36% 3-point shooter since he really started taking threes that the second to last season in Memphis in 2016-17. But he's a 38.5 3-point shooter last year. Still old, he's long in the tooth, but he knows where to be. He's a stalwart post defender. So, and I could tell you from being in a series with the Raptors how much Marc Gasol gave maybe the best post player in the NBA fits in Joel Embiid. He's really savvy, knows how to. He's plotting. He's not fast laterally, but he knows positioning.
But you can also put him.
You can put him next to Anthony Davis and LeBron pretty easily in a lineup.
You can put him in that Jokic role where you just give it to him in the center post and just let him play, which is something that the Lakers didn't have last year. Like they tried to do it with JaVale and Dwight a little bit, and they could pass a little bit, but it's nowhere near what Mark is able to do.
Getting Mark and Montrezl Harrell is an absolute, not just an upgrade, but like a clear skyrocket upgrade over Dwight and JaVale. Like the skill sets they bring. I can't wait to see Schroeder and Harrell run bench units out of the gym, because I think it's going to be very similar to what Lou Will and Montrez did with the Clippers, although Schroeder is a better playmaker and can get to the rim with more athleticism. So that pick and roll is going to be the Lakers they made out like bandits. Wes Matthews, I think at this point, well, maybe not the better defender than Danny Green, definitely a more consistent player last season than what Danny Green was, although I get the finals experience and all that with Danny Green. Just it blows my mind that the Lakers with LeBron and Anthony Davis were somehow able to tinker their roster to get better.
Right. I think it's so interesting too, because my main concern was the Montrezl Harrell defensive stuff. That's the main reason why I didn't want him. But I mean, we got him for a bargain price, so I really can't complain. But the the idea that, okay, cool, we're going to take a step back defensively. But I think, and I've seen a couple people bring this up on Twitter, is I think that the Clippers put him in bad defensive situations. I don't think playing the true five is necessarily his strongest suit. And I think with putting him next to someone like AD and Marc Gasol, who are brilliant defensive bigs, I think can mitigate some of Montrez's issues and make it so that it's not easy to hunt him. Right? Because he's not going to be the only big on the floor. And if he is the only big on the floor, it wouldn't be in key defensive situations.
I also think the bubble performance from Montrez was, he had family stuff going on. He was going in and out of the bubble, and I think the Clippers did leave him out to dry defensively a lot. So I think he's a better defender than what he showed in that playoffs. And I'm also kind of worried about. I have no problem thinking that AD and Marc Gasol can fit together. I wonder how Harrell and an Anthony Davis big-oriented lineup would fit together, because that would mean AD would have to space the floor, and I don't want him to do that. I want him to be everywhere, but Montrez would be in the same spots that AD.
I mean, I could see it the same way that it worked with JaVale and Dwight, where they just put him in the dunker spot.
It'll work for sure.
You just let AD do the baseline fadeaway turnaround that he likes to do a million times a game.
Oh yeah, it'll work. I just like seeing AD at the five. Like we saw it with the Lakers in the finals. It was like, all right, just cut the bullshit and start Anthony Davis at the five instead of Dwight.
I think that's something that people kind of overblown, where when AD says he doesn't want to play the five, it's not that he doesn't want to play the five. He doesn't want to play the five during the regular season where he's going to get beat up and be tired by the end. In terms of playoff times, yeah, he played a lot of five, and he was fine playing a lot of five. It's the only issue is like he doesn't want to play five against the Charlotte Hornets, or he's going to get beat up down low. Like he just doesn't want that beating on his body over the course of the year, which I totally get and understand.
Yep.
So I think that's a little overblown that he doesn't want to play the five.
Yeah, and also I don't like I was saying earlier, I think Schroeder Harrell lineups when LeBron or Anthony Davis, if Vogel decides sometimes, hey, there's going to be nights where LeBron and Anthony Davis are off the floor at the same time, you don't really have to worry as much because you got a Schroeder Harrell supercharged lineup. Maybe you put in Marc Gasol too, and the Lakers have more versatility and wing versatility now, especially with the addition of Matthews and bringing back KCP. It's just LeBron, the Lakers are the favorites once again, and Laker haters like myself.
Honestly, they should be even more favorites this year. Everyone counted them out last year. Their bench unit is absolutely insane this year.
Yeah, they got better, and I think some of the teams in the West got worse, and powerhouses in the West still that have yet to break up their duos have gotten worse. Warriors got worse. The Lakers have to be the only contenders are probably that could knock off the Lakers. I see if I were to do a early snapshot, way too damn early power rankings, the Lakers would be one, and I'd probably put some Eastern Conference teams second and third before I go to the West.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go to my team, because I have to tell you, it was the first time since the 2017 draft where we traded up for Markelle Fultz, and I was ecstatic. Like the week before that we traded up for the number one pick, I did a huge profile on #basketball.com about Fultz, what I liked about his game, wrote 2,000 words on it. I was ecstatic. That's the core for the future. Embiid, Fultz, Simmons. And then, of course, we all know what happened. And then the off seasons after that, it was just quick moves, trades that are like death by 1,000 paper cuts, and we ended up basically screwed with this roster that we ended the 2019-2020 season with. Then in comes Daryl Morey. The Sixers fall ass backwards into an elite coaching staff, one of the best executives ever. It was all backwards. They got the coach first, then hired the top of the basketball operations, but the end result was what we wanted. Daryl Morey's first day on draft night, immediately changes everything. Goodbye, Al Horford. Honestly, he got off Al Horford at a price that I did not think was possible, even though
No one thought was possible.
even though I think Horford is still a good player and was also a victim of the Sixers roster construction. He looked washed at times last year, and I thought, well, not at times, like half the time. And I thought we were going to have to give up at least 2 firsts to get off of him. The fact that we gave up a 2025 protected first-round pick and the 34th pick in this past draft and Al Horford to get back Danny Green and Terrence Ferguson, who are players who theoretically fit our 2 best players. And then you trade Josh Richardson, who I thought was a sneaky trade candidate nobody outside of Sixers land was talking about. You knock it out of the park by sending Josh Richardson, another second-round pick, the 36th pick in the draft, to Dallas, who need that type of player around Luka Doncic. And then they send back Seth Curry and his 3-year, $24 million contract. So not only did Daryl Morey shed Al Horford's contract, got us under the apron, and I'm not going to go into the financials of cap space and the nitty-gritty of it, but gave us more options with our exceptions now that we're, lowering our tax bill. Got Horford off. You got shooters around Simmons and Embiid. And then you draft Tyrell Maxey, who unexpectedly fell. And maybe me and you, we could go into Maxey a little bit after I'm done here. But to get Maxey, to draft Isaiah Joe, take a chance on somebody like Paul Reed, who I just became an expert on Paul Reed just over the weekend, and Isaiah Joe. To take chances on those guys, Isaiah Joe could shoot the hell out of the ball.
Yeah.
Like, say what you will about his percentage last year. I think he took 10 threes a game because he had to. And that's not indicative of the shooter he is. At least I know he could shoot. Paul Reed is interesting. He reminds me, when I've watched film on him over the weekend, it kind of reminds me of Rondé Hollis Jefferson. Just a weird player that could just do stuff and is a bull in a china shop type of mentality. Can't really shoot, but is always around the ball. Really hard-nosed defensively. Morey had a clear mindset, and he said as much. When you put shooting around Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, lineups are dominant. They destroy teams. And Morey has made it's on paper. Understand they haven't played a game, but I am telling you, watching the slog of a regular season I watched last year and how badly the players fit around Embiid and Simmons, I could tell you right now that people are going to be sleeping on this team just from last year, and I get it, rightfully so, but I'm telling you right now, because they have better players, not necessarily more talented, but better fitting players around their 2 best players, to me, this is a mid to high 50 wins team. I guess it's a 72 game season now, but on pace to be a 55, 57 win team, just with the moves Morey made alone. And I understand there's more to go, but he wanted shooting, ball handling, and scoring off the dribble, which is something Maxey could possibly do in year 1, hopefully. And they didn't take plotting power forwards. They got Dwight. I'm not a huge fan of that signing, but we needed a backup center. But I loved what Morey did. That's my long way of saying I love what Morey did.
No, absolutely. I think that the interesting thing when you talk about what the Sixers did is he just completely undid everything the last 2 years. You guys are pretty much in the same spot you were when the hype train started around Ben and Embiid with the shooting and everything else,
with considerably less assets now.
Right, all he did was turn the clock back and was like, let's get back to that.
What do you think Elton Brand's first thought was when Morey just walked in and was like, okay, literally everything is wrong with this?
I think he it's like the old joke of the tech support agent of all right, get up out of the chair and let me do it. I'm taking over your screen and let me
it's like that young thug Gunna meme where young thug's looking at the computer.
Yeah, so he's just looking. He's like, all right, let me take over your computer. Let me show you how to do this. And then he trades Al Horford, and Elton Brand's like, whoa, you can do that?
But we just gave him that contract.
Wait, you're allowed to trade players like this? How?
Like,
How?
huh? What? And I don't know about you, but with the lineups Maury was referencing when he was talking about surrounding shooting with Simmons and Embiid, we talked about it a little bit, I think, in episode 2. But the Saric, Redick, Covington, Simmons, and Embiid lineups were destroying teams. They had a plus 19.5 net rating. Their offensive rating was off the charts while still being good defensively. I think a Green, Curry, Simmons, Harris, Embiid lineup has way more upside, shooting upside especially, but a little bit more offensive upside because I think Seth Curry can create a little bit. I think Tobias Harris with Doc Rivers had him running a lot of pick and roll going downhill, not to make plays necessarily, but to get Tobias a really efficient scorer into his spots.
Right.
And so on a team that didn't run much pick and roll last year, I think Tobias Harris was also hamstrung. I think with this move, it moves Tobias back to the 4, so where he can maybe recoup like 60% of the value of that massive contract he signed. And I think it has way more shooting potential. And when you have Simmons and Embiid in space, they dominate. But the thing is, they haven't had... Redick was gravity shifting in his movement, but Curry is one of like the 5 best shooters on the planet. And he could shoot from deep, and he just has a different type of gravitational pull than Redick does. Both elite, both some of the greatest shooters ever, but Curry just adds a little bit more.
When you have that name on the back, you know.
Yeah, when you have that name on the back, you have special powers to shoot the basketball. And Danny Green can shoot. These guys not only can shoot, is tight contested shot 3-point attempts. They have quick triggers.
Even more than the shooting, and like this is what we were talking about when I was talking about the getting rid of Danny Green for the Lakers. It's the idea of the reputational gravity, where it doesn't matter
the willingness to shoot, right? Like even
no, not even that. It's the idea of like, hey, if Lonzo Ball and Danny Green are both shooting the same percentage, teams are going to let Lonzo shoot.
Yep.
But then they won't let Danny Green shoot.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the reputation of the player.
Yeah, definitely. The reputation.
Like, it doesn't matter if Danny Green is hitting these shots or not. And that's kind of what I was trying to explain to Laker fans of like, dude, it doesn't matter if Danny Green makes any of these shots. Look at how aggressively they close out. And then when they close out like that, it's just a quick skip pass inside to LeBron or like, you know, it creates so much space.
And that's the type of shooting that Simmons and Embiid haven't had in a long time. Like, just reputational, gravitational shooters. But not only that, quick triggers. Like, their only role is to chuck, not their only role, but their willingness to chuck threes. Richardson did not want to chuck threes. He would rather dribble in and take a bullshit 17-footer. It would always make me mad. Harris, for some reason, after shooting 40% with the Clippers from 3, I guess when you come to Philadelphia, rule is you forget how to shoot. So he shot like 35%. If Harris could get back to that a little bit from maybe different shot locations now that he's at the 4, I'm telling you, man, I'm ecstatic. It's great to have a GM again where I don't have to worry about the moves anymore. Like, I didn't have to worry about it with Hinkie. When Colangelo came on, I was like, oh, God, here we go. And I ended up being right in the end. And Elton Brand, I don't have to go over that whole weird thing of how he got hired. I was worried about that. Now I could just relax and just watch my team. Because even if I disagree with some moves Morey makes down the road, like I did with Hinkie, at least I know there's a thought process behind it.
Right. No, I totally see where you're coming from.
So, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I said I'm excited to see what you guys are able to do.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I am too. From one Eastern Conference team to another, what the hell are the Detroit Pistons doing?
Like I told you before, they're taking a book from the Knicks. They saw the Knicks signing all these forwards, and they're like, man, those are big dudes. I like it. I fucks with this. Let's do that.
Oh, I thought you were saying I thought you were saying you fucks with this. You're saying that's what the Pistons. I was like, wait, what?
The Pistons are like, we fucks with this. Let's do more of that. And then they're like, you know what Blake Griffin needs? More big bodies around him.
That's the crazy thing. I loved their draft. they got. I love their like Killian Hayes falls to them. I was like, there's no point guard there that could challenge Killian Hayes. He has the like LaMelo Ball. He has the chance to make mistakes and all that stuff. And then they start bringing in guys like, well, classic Sixer Jahlil Okafor. They brought in Mason Plumlee, Jeremy Grant, and they already drafted Sadiq Bey and Isaiah Stewart. And they already have Blake Griffin. Like, what the? What are they? Are they gonna go?
These aren't small contracts either. These are like big deals.
No, Jeremy Grant. The Nuggets offered counter or matched Jeremy Grant's offer from the Pistons, but Grant went to the Pistons because he chose to go to the Pistons because it sounded like they're offering him more of a role, which I'm all about. Jeremy Grant, I'm all about getting your money and getting the role you feel like you deserve. Go get that. From the Pistons perspective, I don't fucking get it because like if you're asking Jeremy Grant to be more of a scorer and a creator, that's just not his game. Like I'm happy he worked his way up to get to this point, but from a Pistons perspective, the allocation of money they have spent on bigs in this free agency, I'm so confused. Like it's like going back to the Sacramento Kings. In the 2018-19 season, or the 27 before that season started, the Kings decided it was good to, Buddy Hield, Bogdanovich. They traded for Harrison Barnes midway. They added a bunch of 28-year-olds, 27 people that were considerably older than the franchise cornerstone they drafted, right? And so there was this tug and pull between should the young guys play, veterans want to win now, et cetera, et cetera. If I was the Pistons or like the Hornets earlier, just let the young guys play. Like Sadiq Bey, I think, is a really good prospect. Isaiah Stewart is another intriguing prospect, another intriguing big. Killian Hayes, to me, has the potential to be up in that Wiseman ball class, right?
Right.
Like, why are they big ball? Like I don't get it.
I don't know. I don't see how this works. I don't understand it at all.
And then they traded Tony Bradley to the Sixers for Zaire Smith, and then they cut Zaire Smith, which, by the way, if I was like the Knicks or somebody, I would take a flyer on Zaire Smith. I still believe in that kid. He almost died his rookie year, so that set him back, but I still think he's a really good prospect. Somebody should take a flyer on him. But like, why would the Pistons cut Zaire Smith? Like,
I don't know. None of these moves make sense. I can't justify any single one of these, and it's so weird to me. I don't see. Yeah, I just don't see it, and I don't know what the Pistons are doing. And like again, I think they are the worst situation in the NBA. Like, if I was a GM and they're like, you could have any job you want, I would be like, I immediately don't want the Pistons job.
Yeah,
like,
I'm looking at the teams. I'm looking at the teams right now. They're definitely in the running. Like, I would say the Knicks too, but
the Knicks are in New York and they have RJ Barrett. They have RJ Barrett.
Me and you basically have the mentality of every free agent ever. Hey, it's New York, so
yeah, like they can't be worse than you. Got to live in Detroit. You gotta live in Detroit. Your team is garbage. Your salary cap's terrible. You got no picks. Like,
you have 5,000 bigs.
Yeah, the hell's going on? So
like, I can't wait to see a Jahlil Okafor, Blake Griffin back or front court. That's gonna be fun.
God. Like I don't. That's when Blake starts playing the point forward role and starts just trying to.
And then you're taking the ball out of Killian Hayes' hands. He'll try to attack a closeout, and there's just three defenders in the paint.
He's like Killian, go spot up for three. I'm a dribble this out. So on the other side, I love what the Hawks are doing, and I'm
iffy on that. I'd like to. I'd be curious to hear why.
I love the Rondo signing. I love giving Trae Young someone to bounce ideas off of, and like someone like a mentor kind of thing.
Yes,
I love that. I love the idea of Bogdan and Gallinari as like just spot up wings that can facilitate around Trae. I love Okongwu. I think he's a great defender. I think him combined with John Collins can be some great rim protection and sort of just dive threat. Okongwu can shoot the three also, so I think like just giving more space for Trae Young to operate. And then I also love for Bogdan and Gallinari to have them as sort of players that can still play, but guys that can mentor and kind of help develop Cam Reddish, because he does have a similar game to what they do in terms of like Gallinari as a less so as a shooter, but like more as a slasher and sort of this kind of versatile 3-level scorer that I think Cam Reddish still can be. I think that they all give him that sort of if they're again
you still
they're,
think
they all
Cam Reddish can be that guy?
I think he has potential to be at least being a Gallinari type of player where he's not perfect and he has problems and issues, but I think he can be. He's not going to be Kevin Durant or Brandon Ingram. I don't think he's that, but I think he is the. I think he can score and become a decent 3-level scorer in this league.
Okay.
Like I think he could probably consistently average 15 to 18 points a game in like if he really reaches potential. Which is solid.
I'd agree with that. Yeah. I just as a franchise guy or whatever. I wasn't.
I don't see him as a franchise guy.
I wasn't bullish on Reddish really anyway. But
I could see again. I don't see him as a franchise guy. I see him as a fantastic,
most definitely,
as a fantastic Robin to Trae Young's Batman.
Yeah. I could see maybe third option ceiling type thing, but I went back and forth on the Hawks because on the one hand, I like the young talent they all have. I like that they drafted DeAndre Hunter last year. Kevin Huerter was hurt last year, so he didn't really take that leap. But I just wonder, you mentioned John Collins. I think he's now expendable. I think he's going to get traded, actually. I also think it's either one of DeAndre Hunter or Kevin Huerter.
I think one of them's gone.
One of them's going to be gone too because you don't sign Danilo Gallinari for 3 years, $20 million a year, without one starting him. And I think his best position at this point in his career is power forward, which would be John Collins' spot. But then wait, you can't move John Collins to center because you have Clint Capella, who is a really good player and brings more value, I think, to the court than John Collins does, even though he's basically has the ceiling of a 2010 guy. He's not really a good defender yet. He's okay at rim protecting, but I think this move really made John Collins expendable. And I love the Chris Dunn signing. That's another player I'm irrationally high on. He's a monster defender. Only people like us will watch like 7-minute defensive highlights of Chris Dunn when the season's over and stuff. Like, he's a monster defensively. Not a particularly good offensive player, but you need as many wing defenders and guard defenders around Trae Young as possible because he's literally bottom 2 or bottom when it comes to defensive players. He is just small and gets picked on. And on top of that, he's just technique-wise and everything else that you would say, oh, if you put in more effort, you'd be a little bit more effective. He's bad at that too. But an incredible Nova Star offensive player, right? You get Okongwu, which was a really good pick. Probably the best defender in the draft. So that's another. It seems like the Hawks are trying to move this thing forward a little bit too fast. Maybe it's just me always liking teams that kind of go grassroots and develop their players slowly. But I guess if you feel like Huerter or John Collins is expendable, then I guess, you make your moves accordingly, because I honestly don't see how this is going to work. Like we were talking about earlier, veterans want to win, young players want to play and develop, and if Gallinari's here, you're not bringing him off the bench. So it's like kind of reading the tea leaves a little bit.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I think their best lineup, honestly, is to have Trae Young, Bogdan at the 2,
we didn't even talk about Bogdanovich. That's why I think Huerter. That's the main reason why I think Huerter's expendable, is because if they're bringing in Bogdanovich, I would much rather have Bogey than Huerter.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends if you bring in who you're bringing off the bench, if it's Huerter or forget we just mentioned his name. I can't remember his name. Right. Like you could play one at the 3 if you want it. You could play one at the 2, one at the 3.
Mm.
But like I think it's Trae Young, it's Bogdan, it's Cam Reddish, it's Gallinari, and then it's Capella, and then you bring Onyeka, the first man off the bench. And then when you do that, you shift Cam you put Cam on the bench, you shift Danilo to the 3, and you put Onyeka at the 4. I think those are like your lineups.
Yep. And then maybe Bruno Fernando takes a step in his development, because I know they were high on him too when they drafted him last year.
I think he has some glaring weaknesses, but I think like it depends on development.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he's solid. I think this lineup is solid. I think they can compete in the East
for the 8th seed. Yeah, for sure.
I think the joke that I made yesterday, I was like half joking, was that the Lakers bench would be the 5th seed in the East.
I mean,
just think about it. It'd be.
I don't see that the East isn't that weak anymore, because the Nets were the 7th seed last year and they didn't have KD and Kyrie. So,
because I was just looking it over because I was like it's Schroeder, Caruso, Kuz, Markieff Morris, and Montrezl Harrell is like your starting 5.
It's incredible that we mentioned all these players on the Lakers and we didn't mention Kuzma.
Again, I think Kuz is like odd man out. I think he gets traded before the season's over.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that, because you're damn sure not going to extend him.
You're not going to give him the money that he wants. He wants something like 15, 18 million, and he's not going to get that.
Hell no.
But you know what?
But hey, if he could get his money, get his money. But hell no.
Yeah, if I'm the Lakers, there's no way I'm giving him that money, because he's not worth it. And it's Laker fans, casual Laker fans, please understand. There's more to the game than scoring the basketball.
And he's not even that good at scoring either.
No,
like,
he is not.
Just because he'll have the occasional quarter where he goes crazy in Staples Center before the pandemic hit, or just go nuts or whatever. Like, oh my God, Summer League Kuzma's here. He's not that good of a player.
No, he got better. He got a lot better defensively under Vogel and watching AD and LeBron.
To his credit, and in the playoffs, he had some really key games where if he doesn't perform well, the Lakers don't win. So I don't want to disparage Kuzma too much.
No, but I will say I still don't trust him to bring up the ball.
Nope.
And to dribble at all, shoot off the dribble. I think there's a point I was watching. I can't remember what game. I think it was game 2 or 3 of the Nuggets series. And I don't know if you were watching this, but it was the thing of. And I looked at. I was watching with my dad, and I looked at my dad, and I realized I was like, "Oh my God!" And he goes, "What?" And I was like, "Kuzma thinks he's Michael Porter Jr."
Yeah, he took that matchup personally. Every time Porter would hit a 3, Kuzma would try to go right back at him,
down and try to hit the 3. And then the thing was that
he saw the Spider-Man meme in his head. He was like, "Wait, that's me."
Yeah, and then it was a thing of, so there was a play where they come down and Michael Porter Jr. is running down, and like, in the corner, gets the ball, spots him in the corner, pump, Kuzma flies up, and Michael Porter Jr. just goes in and dunks. Boom, easy, right?
Yep.
Then Kuzma comes down, tries to go 1-on-1 with Michael Porter Jr., does his turnaround jumper, misses, they come back down, boom, same play, corner, pump. Kuzma goes straight up again. I was like, dude, he's just doing the same thing over and over again. Like, I don't understand.
Even the announcers were calling it out. They're like, Chris Webber was like, "See, Kuzma can't take this matchup personally," and it's one of the few things I ever agree with Chris Webber on when he does basketball broadcasting. But I was like, dude, this guy is really trying to take it to Michael Porter Jr. in a playoff game right now.
He thinks he's Michael Porter Jr. and I was like, oh my God, I
had the epiphany.
I completely get why he's terrible. Because I think there's a point to Kuz where Kuz is solid if he understands what he is. If Kuzma was like 27 and comfortable in his skin and knew who he was and knew what his game was, played his role, boom,
that would be a player casual Laker fans would actually be right about. Like, that's the type of player they're describing right now. But Kuzma's not that.
He tries too much. He does too much. He does too much. He can't do. No, please, I'm good.
Okay. Real quickly, because we have not talked about it yet. What the hell happened in Milwaukee?
So to me, I put a lot of this on.
For the listeners who don't, sorry to cut you up before we get into it. For the listeners, so the Bucks, literally right after we were done recording last week's episode, it was like an hour after. Everything went to shit. So, or shit hit the fan, I should say, more aptly. The Bucks traded a bajillion first rounders for Drew Holiday, and that was the first domino that fell. Everybody was freaking out. Like, too many draft picks for Drew Holiday, blah, blah, blah. Everybody got their takes off. And then about 30 minutes to an hour later, news comes out that the Bucks and the Kings agreed to a sign-and-trade deal that would have sent Bogdanovich to the Bucks in exchange for Dante DiVincenzo, Ersan Ilyasova, and DJ Wilson. No picks or anything going to the Kings. But
which would have been a steal.
It would have been a steal. I fucked with that lineup heavy, that projected lineup. Holiday, Bogdan, Chris Middleton, Giannis, and Brook Lopez. I would have put them right back in the finals. But
that's a dirty line.
But the problem was the player at the centerpiece of this deal did not agree to anything. Or maybe they did and the league caught on with the tampering because the Bucks are now being investigated for tampering. But the deal basically fell through. And now Bogdan is agreed to an offer sheet with the Hawks. Kings have a chance to match. If they don't, Bogdan is a Hawk. If the Kings do match, Bogdan is back in Sacramento, but he is not a Milwaukee Buck. What the hell happened?
So, from what I've been able to put together and talking to different people, apparently they just either the Bucks, the Kings assumed that he was going to re-sign, or the Kings assumed that he was just going to they were just going to re-sign him. No big deal, and didn't actually confirm with Bogdan that he was going to be that he was going to sign or that he was okay with it. They never talked to him about it. Wow. So I think the assumption was oh yeah, he's going to resign and then we'll trade him. Cool. He doesn't have a say because obviously after he signs, they don't have a say. He doesn't have a say where he's going. And so I think the assumption was just yeah, he wants all this money, so we're gonna go ahead and do that. And I was like, well, I'm so confused.
I'm
so confused. And the thing is, and I think we talked about it right after too, that is the most Kings thing ever.
Yeah. And it's tough for me because I don't want to do the Kangs, Kangz meme yet with this new front office. I think they hired smart people and I think they deserve the benefit of the doubt. But it was definitely the Kings' past ghosts are still being exercised, and they kind of lashed out before they got sent back to the Shadow Realm before they left this planet. And so it came in the form of this fiasco. Honestly, if the Bogdan deal happened and he went to the Bucks, I would not have given one shit about the first round picks that the Bucks gave up for Drew Holiday.
No, it all makes sense, right?
Because it all makes sense. And then really in a way it still doesn't matter because if Giannis signs the extension before the December signs for the extension before the December 21st deadline, then I still think to a degree it doesn't really matter because they got a perennial tier 1 franchise player who's an MVP candidate signing back with them. But man,
have you seen this crazy?
The 2027 draft is so far away. Shit, a lot of shit could happen in 7 years. Stuff already happened in this year alone. If there's a lesson to be taken from this year, a lot could happen in 1 year. So 7 years down the road, I think the Bucks might have they did give up a lot for Drew Holiday. Let me just say that. And I think Ryan Russillo brought up a good point about this. Because of the way free agency is done now and stuff, you don't want to show your hand and all that. So teams kind of have to make decisions scared. Why not just tell the Bucks, I'm going to re-sign. What's it going to take to make the roster better? Just tell me before I make any decision. And that way the Bucks don't have to throw a bunch of picks on the poker table and be like, here, take it. Drew Holiday's a top 30 player. I think he's probably the best guard defender in the NBA, although he is getting older now. He's 30. complete upgrade over George Hill and Eric Bledsoe combined, I think. And even though I still think the Bucks actually rebounded nicely so far in free agency, and I actually think they're a little bit better than last year. At least they have players that make more sense around this team. They still gave up a lot of picks for Jrue Holiday. Yeah. And the Bogdan thing kind of just deflated everything about it. And I know Bucks fans are going to be all like, well, these picks won't matter down the road. They're late round picks. 2027 so far away. You don't want to... A lot could happen in 7 years, and you don't want to be in the 2027 draft not having a high pick because some crazy stuff happened within those 7 years, you know?
Yeah, I mean, have you heard this crazy rumor that's come out in the past? Like, I don't even know if it's a rumor or people just talking about it or what. Have you heard about this Laker plan?
Oh, I saw that. Where Anthony Davis, right? He's allegedly, this is a rumor. This is all rumors, but he's tracking whether Giannis signs the extension or not. And if Giannis does sign the extension, AD will probably sign. I don't know if he'll still sign a 1-on-1 or the 5-year, but basically if Giannis doesn't sign the extension this year, AD could do a 1-on-1, opt out after this season, and then have LeBron recruit Giannis. And
then with the empty space, the Lakers can sign Giannis and then re-sign AD.
And then they can go into the cap and re-sign AD. Yeah. Because they'll have his bird rights.
Yeah. So it's just a way to cheat the system and get Giannis on the team. But with
I know Lakers Twitter had a field day with that tweet before I took a nap today. I saw that tweet before I went to bed.
It's kind of going nuts, and it makes a ton of sense.
I mean, it does make sense. It sounds like LeBron's all about playing 5D chess. So they did the same thing with the Kawhi stuff when Kawhi, like 2 years ago with Kawhi. Yeah, they were waiting on Kawhi.
So yeah, like this is getting a third person in LA has always kind of been the plan or like something that they've looked at. So,
that would be insane. Rob Pelinka, who understandably got heat for not understanding some mechanisms of cap space.
That was so overblown.
It was overblown, but you have to admit it was funny. And he also didn't know some mechanisms of cap space as an NBA executive. It is funny, but
it is funny.
But he has turned it around and he built a roster that won the fucking championship. So he's already a really good executive, but the moves he made, he has learned. You could tell he's learned. Like, this was like a heat check, not a heat check, but like this was him catching fire this offseason. And if the Lakers end up getting Giannis after all of this, after LeBron only going to the Lakers to film Space Jam, and I guess LeBron can only win one title with Lonzo Ball and a bunch of kids, right? Or Rob Pelinka doesn't know anything. Magic Johnson just up and left and not told anybody. And they're still sitting here with the championship, and they got better, and Laker fans are about to be 10 times more insufferable.
And the thing to look at here too, and hey, you can say whatever you're gonna say. There is a world where after next year, they do get Lonzo Ball back.
Oh, that would be funny.
He comes back to LA because he's literally the perfect point guard for everything that they want to do.
Yeah, and also Lonzo Ball, and I hope to God his 3-point shot stays consistent into next year, and I hope that bubble was an admiration because I really think he made strides last year. That is the perfect guy to put next to LeBron.
And LeBron loves Lonzo.
Yeah. Because he's a smart player and he plays the game quote unquote the right way. Like they definitely kept the wrong young player out of BI and Lonzo.
I think Dave Griffin is also
he's smart,
extremely intelligent person.
Yeah,
that does not want Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah, he was also like, look, you could keep Kuzma over there. Like, don't even bring him to the discussion. But damn, man, like just imagine. If the Lakers...
Also, Lonzo Ball is a Clutch Sports client, so...
I'm sorry, what?
I said Lonzo Ball is also a Clutch Sports client.
Oh, yeah. So there's that happening. Dynamic, too. So just don't touch Ben Simmons. Leave him alone.
It's fine. You can have him. We'll
Yes.
take everyone else though.
But yeah, it's just overall I think this free agency, a lot happened, but a lot also didn't happen. There were definitely moves. I think a lot of teams just made moves on the fringes. Tweaks here and there, add a little ball handling here, add a little movement, shooting off movement here. But there was really nothing big. I guess we're all waiting for the big domino now to drop about Harden and whether he's going to get traded or not.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick. The Rockets are making some moves. Have you looked at what they've done?
Yeah, I know they signed a Christian Wood to a 3-year deal. By the way, another guy Hinkie signed, or Hinkie found off the scrap heap, by the way. I know they made a few other moves. I'm pulling up their spot track right now.
Yeah, so they signed Sterling Brown, which is someone that I really like.
Yeah, Sterling Brown, another second rounder that was traded from the Sixers that I got mad about.
They signed Boogie Cousins, which I think is a great get as like a flyer of like, let's see what he is.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I'm so happy that he got an opportunity.
I will always be a DeMarcus Cousins fan. Always.
I was hoping he would sign with the Lakers, obviously, because I think that he had a bond with this team.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I just want him to get a chance somewhere.
It's just living here in Sacramento. It's still incredible the love he gets here. There's older people I know here who are of that old school, like, oh, DeMarcus has an attitude, he doesn't play the right way, and all that's all the usual bullshit people try to do to disparage him. But he's a good dude. He cares a lot about the communities he's in, and when healthy, he's a fun player. He's not the same player anymore, but I'm really happy. I'm really happy Boogie isn't out of the league.
Yeah, I think he's great. I think he's a good person, and he's a good person for the league. And I think having him around and like everything he's been through, I think there's an opportunity for him somewhere. But yeah, I love the Sterling Brown signing. I love the DeMarcus Cousins signing, and like these are signings that are, to me,
sounds like they're keeping Harden.
Well, it works both ways, right? Because they're not expensive contracts, and they're things that are like, cool, this can hold us over if we get rid of these guys, or they can be really good pieces if we keep them.
Yeah, they could be used as contracts in a trade, obviously too. They got Ariza back. They got Trevor Ariza back in Houston for the 50th time in his career. Real quickly,
Trevor
sorry,
traded 5 times the past week.
Yeah, I know. What, he's been from Portland to OKC to Houston. It's wild. Also, real quickly before we go, Robert Covington, process Sixer, now got traded for 2 first-round picks and is a player that Portland needed. Christian Wood, once again, as we mentioned, 3 years, $41 million. Jeremy Grant, 3 years, $60 million. Sterling Brown was a second-round pick drafted by the Sixers, and they immediately trade him to the Bucks, even though they had no guards at the time. They thought it was a good idea to trade Brown. It's incredible. Well, Brown isn't a former Hinkie guy, but it goes to show you, I bring this up because I hate it when teams don't use all their assets. Like teams like the Bulls or the Sixers, they'll sell their second round picks, and I'm like, why? Take a swing. Like, especially if you have a high 30s pick, take a swing. Take a swing at undrafted guys that are outliers in something. Like Covington had an outlier wingspan and shot a lot of threes, and then turned into a great 2-way wing. We could debate how much value he actually is, but that's a wing Portland needs. Christian Wood turns into basically a 2-way center. Can stretch the floor, can rim protect a little bit. Now made himself a $41 million man. Jeremy Grant has become one of the better defenders in the league and shot 36% from 3 this past season. There's value to be had everywhere, and I just hate it when teams don't explore it, I guess.
Right. I totally get where you're coming from. Before we go, I do want to bring up one thing I forgot to bring up when we were talking about the draft. Okay. Can I just say, coming in, and I think we talked about it in the first episode, that I love Isaac Okoro.
Oh, for the Cavs?
I love him as a player. I think he got drafted to the worst possible situation for him.
Okay. Why do you say that?
So he is a slashing wing and a top tier defender. So he goes to a team that has no defenders and no defense whatsoever. So he's gonna have to guard and shoulder the entire defensive load, and he's gonna be put on a lot of pressure to like lock down the top guy. So he's gonna be cooked every game pretty much. Then he wants to get to the basket and slash, which they have Andre Drummond and Kevin Love down there.
Yeah.
So you're gonna when you try to do that, you're just gonna run into a forest of people down there. And then you have two guards that like to play ISO and have very low assist playmaking numbers.
Yes.
So who's going to get you the ball?
It's an interesting mishmash of players. They also did make some trades. Like they also did make some trades. Getting JaVale McGee, getting Damian Dotson. I actually think is a good move because I liked him on the Knicks. He was just not playing as much because they had 10 power forwards they had to give minutes to. But I don't know. I think the Cavs need to start somewhere, right? Like, you know, I'm in the Locked On Cavs Discord. My friend Evan Damerel is the co-host. It seems like Cavs fans are happy about the Okoro pick. Dude is chiseled.
As a player. I love him as a player.
Dude is chiseled, and I think you can get a lot out. You can mold him into a really unique player. But I have to think some moves are coming down the road. It sounds like Andre Drummond is going to be gone at some point. Maybe Kevin Love, but I think every year we talk about Kevin Love getting traded. He just stays there. I think Andre Drummond is on the move, but I think that is a decent spot for him to develop because I think I'm higher on Colin Sexton than you are, even though I wasn't really high on him coming out of college. I think he really made strides as a player that I didn't think he was capable of making. The Garland Sexton backcourt, there might not be a lot of playmaking there, but
I don't know what that backcourt is. That backcourt's so weird to me.
It's so weird, and you know, it sounds like maybe Sexton will have to be the sixth man at some point or something. They're gonna have to do something about that backcourt, but I do think the Cavs are starting to they're trying to find their way in terms of figuring out what this team's going to be. It seems like JB Bickerstaff wants to go all in on defense. I like Kevin Porter Jr. Now he had some off the court stuff, but I love Kevin Porter Jr.'s scoring potential. Shout out Lefty Gang.
Lefty Gang.
Lefty. He's a lefty.
Lefty Gang.
Yep. I get what you're saying. It's not the best situation for Okoro, but I do think he can develop there. Like they needed a defensive linchpin, and I think you start with a player with Okoro's physical features to start that process.
If you take a look at the picks around that area, right? You look at like the Bulls. To me, the Bulls are the perfect fit for Isaac Okoro. Right? I love the fit with him, with Marketing, and with Wesley, with
Wendell Carter.
Wendell Carter and like Colby White and Zach LaVine. I think like that's a fun roster. They can get out and run. They can space the floor. They can play solid defense. Like there's space and there's a fit there. I can see the fit there. But the Cavs, it seems so awkward, and I don't know where he's like. I don't know if you're Isaac Okoro on the offensive end of the floor. Where do you stand?
Yeah, that's good. That's the question, right? Where is
I don't know where you stand. Like, do you stand in a corner? Like, that's not your game. Like, do you try to drive to the basket and clog up the paint with Andre Drummond? Like, I don't know if that's the play either. Like, I don't know where he goes. It's so weird to me. I think even if he falls down to like 9 with the Wizards or goes to the Suns or even like maybe the Knicks, even like just something that doesn't have this log, like the mix there is so weird.
Well, yeah, it's interesting, but I think the Cavs needed to start somewhere. on.
No, I get it. I get
Yeah.
the Cavs perspective. Great player. For Isaac Okoro, I just see a situation where he's going to get lost, or he has a potential to get lost.
And I'm also not that high on JB Bickerstaff as a coach.
No, neither am I.
I don't know. It'll be interesting. I hope the situation.
Looking at their guards, oh, it feels so bad. Looking at their guards, they have Colin Sexton, they have Darius Garland, obviously. Then they have Dante Exum, Jordan Clarkson, Brandon Knight.
Well, no, Jordan Clarkson is on the Jazz.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Jazz. Or he went back to the Jazz.
Yeah, he just signed a nice deal with the Jazz too.
Yeah, like you look at Dellavedova is the only like real point guard.
Dellavedova's back. C.D. Osman is also he's an okay young player, but he's one of the Cavs' better playmakers. But that's not.
He's a forward. He's not
really if he's one of your best playmakers. Like the lack of playmaking is concerning on here. Kevin Love does make up for some of that a little bit when he's playing. But I don't know. I like their talent, but their talent is also weird fitting. Like I'm still not out on Darius Garland. I think Colin Sexton is gonna be a good player. I love Kevin Porter Jr. I think him and Isaac Okoro are actually kind of a nice theoretical backcourt. But yeah,
again, like I don't hate.
Oh yeah, I get what you're saying. Like the situation's not the best. Like the situation's not the best, but I do think they got a really good player.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I feel I remember just watching that happen and going like, damn, I feel so bad for him. I feel so bad for how awkward this first year is going to be for him.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think should we wrap it up? Should we wrap it up there? Do you have any more free agency thoughts passing?
Good. If there's anything you want to bring up, but otherwise, I'm pretty good. We have a lot to be excited about, and there's still
a lot to be excited about.
There's still a lot of free agents left that are like pretty good. That I'm
fringe free agents that are fringe free agents that are still to be had. That I know Daryl Morey. Just going back to the Sixers real quick, I know he said that this team is set. I would like to see him go after some more. So I would like to see him like go after maybe like an Emmanuel Mudiay or something like that to shore up depth. But at that point, we're just getting too much into the weeds that might not be worth podcasting for. But I'm excited. Morey has been speaking to my heart. I'm content, and training camp's next week.
It's exciting. Very exciting. All right. So, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging out with us. If you guys have any comments, suggestions, things like that, shoot us an email, follow us on Twitter.
Like and review.
All that jazz. Yeah, all that jazz. And thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
The B.O.B.